Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Krishnendu Ray, teaching in the Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta, Calcutta. Today, we are concerned with the paper Economic History of India from earliest times to 1707. The module that we are concerned today here is Introduction and the Indian Geography in connection with early India up to 1200 AD. The main objectives of this module that I want to make you understand is relating history to geography with particular emphasis on the economic dimensions of the activities of the early Indians up to 1300 CE. In this connection, we must concentrate on these things: roots in early India, material prosperity, agriculture, industry, trade and commerce. Now, introduction. In introduction part, we are concerned with archaeological artifacts and historical events from early India to be taken into account. Human beings appear to have characterized geographical spaces with their ideas and activities accordingly. It has been through ages. Geographical spaces transformed into historical places, some of sense of direction developed, grama, janapada, nagara, etc. developed, overland routes, roads for connectivity geographically built, riverine communication utilized. Now, four aims of human life according to Indian tradition, these are dharma, righteousness, artha, material prosperity, kama, desires, moksha, salvation. Of these, artha or material prosperity is essential for the existence of human beings at the physical level in life. One may acquire material prosperity by pursuing agriculture, that is krishi, cattle keeping, poshupalanam and trade, vanijya. The Arthashastra of Kautilya makes us aware of this. Now, students, we have to understand this, that economic activities of the early Indians, in order to understand them, we have to understand these economic activities through ages, but with some breaks, so that we can understand clearly their economic organizations, activities, etc., etc. So, we have divided certain time brackets. We have introduced certain time brackets. First of all, economic activities up to circa 1750 BCE. In this time, up to this time bracket, up to this time, what we get? We get the Horoppans are known to have been involved in the production of both agriculture and non-agricultural goods. Agricultural goods induced rice, included rice crops like wheat, barley, etc. Non-agricultural articles included bricks, terracotta objects, etc. They also seem to have known the art of plying wheeled cars for overland communication and watercrafts for communication across water. Now, after this, what we get? We get economic activities up to 1000 BCE. So, we have introduced 1500 to 1000 BCE. What we get during this time period? We get during the period from about 1500 to about 1000 BCE, we find the people to have pursued agricultural activities. Probably they also used underground water for the purpose of agricultural production. They also resorted to artisanal production as indicated by references to Takshaka, Brikshachedaka, Charmamna, Karmara, etc. The Rig Veda is our major source of information in this regard. Now, after 1000 BCE up to 600 BCE, what we get regarding their economic activities? We get during this later 1000 BC to 600 BCE. So, we have used later Vedic period. During this period, agricultural crops like brihi, that is paddy, godhumo, wheat, shaktavo, flour made of barley, etc. were known. Craftsmen like Kormaro, Monikaro, Ishukaro, that is arrow maker, the Rojju Sarjo, the rope maker, Hiranyakaro, that is goldsmith, etc. were also known. Archaeological traces of iron tools and painted graveware, that is graveware which had painted designs on those objects, painted graveware goods like bowls, dishes, etc. from different parts of India such as Jodhpur, Hastinapur, Atranjikhera, Mathura lent support to artisanal production. Now, economic activities from 600 to 300 BCE. Up to this, up to 600 BCE, what we get? In essence, in a nutshell, we can say that early Indians economically organized geographical spaces in order to produce both agricultural as well as non-agricultural products in order to survive themselves at the physical level in life. So far as agricultural goods were concerned, they produced different types of crops, wheat, barley, etc. They also produced non-agricultural goods like industrial goods, and they also maintained overland communication in order to move their merchandise from one place to another. And they also produced artisanals, they also resorted to artisanal activities like takshana or vrikshachedaka in order to provide space for further economic activities. They had to remove vrikshas or trees also in order to facilitate their economic activities further. So that's why we get certain changes, and up to this we have also seen that they also produced some areas, they also transformed some geographical spaces into those areas of economic activities which they called nagaras or cities in case of the Harappans, as we see even today also. So this is how they gradually changed their pattern of economic activities and developed their life also. Thus we get from 600 BCE to 300 BCE what we get. And dear students, in this connection you must remember one thing, that human beings always try to preserve their experiences for later generations, and in that connection we get their experiences from different literary texts. This is how we get Rig Vedic sources, later Vedic sources, as well as Buddhist textual sources which we find from 600 BCE. Let us see what we get from those literary textual sources, information regarding their economic activities. Let us see from this slide. Economic activities from circa 600 to 300 BCE. Texts like the Vinaya Pitaka, Digha Nikaya, that is Dirgha Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta Nipata, etc. Ashtadhyayi of Panini. Remember, Panini wrote a grammar on Sanskrit. It is completely a grammatical text on Sanskrit language. It has no concern directly with economic activities, information like economic activities. But what we get from this book in connection with the explanation of the Sanskrit grammar, Panini used those things as examples or use for this book grammatical text which were used in day-to-day lives. So, this is how we can analyze those grammatical information and get the required information regarding the economic activities, and that is why this text has been taken into consideration for understanding economic activities of early Indians of this period. Remember, this text is so important that this is also important for understanding later days economic activities also. So, we have taken it in this period. So, Ashtadhyayi of Panini and the artifacts from archaeological excavations at several sites of the Middle Gangetic region provide information about the work of cultivation during the period from 600 to 300 BCE. As we move, what we get, as we have already told you that human beings' economic activities are concerned mainly with agriculture and non-agricultural parts. So, here also we get information regarding agriculture. What we get? We get agriculture, paddy, brihi, til, sesame, etc. were produced. Agricultural implements, because agricultural operations can be done with the use of certain agricultural implements as we also require today. So, also in our ancestors' days also they used agricultural implements. What do we get information? What information do we get from those texts? We get agricultural implements like hollow, that is plough, kuddalo, that is spade, etc. were used. Production of crafts and occupations, Buddhist texts and archaeological artifacts support the existence of occupational groups like Peshokaro, Tontubayo, Rajoko, Nahapito, that is Barbar, Napito, etc. Professional organizations like Sreni, Gono, Pugo and Shangho existed in the society of the time. Rich merchant called Sethi or Sreshthi, the merchant leader called Sharthabaho. All these information we get from these textual sources regarding all these speak volume for their economic activities. Now, as we move from this period towards further, what we get? We get actually information regarding their progress and development further and further. What we get? Let us see in the next slide. 300 to 200 BCE. Agriculture. Agrarian economy was emphasized upon. The Greek accounts of Megasthenes, Arrian, Strabo were aware of the fertility of the land due to the river. Remember students, one thing, these foreign accounts, non-indigenous accounts also either they came to India or they received information required information from other informants, and they also recorded in their texts, and we are using those information in order to understand our ancestors' economic activities during this period. So, we have used foreign accounts also. What we get? They are also aware of the rains due to the monsoon. Officials called agronomoi supervise the task of irrigation in the rural area. We learn from the Arthashastra of Kautilya that the land of the king was known as Shita and the task of cultivation was supervised by the superintendent of agriculture called Shitadhaksha. Both non-indigenous accounts make us aware of the fact that cereals like shali, rice, kodrava, mugga, masa, ana, that is oat, masuro, lentil, etc. were grown. Students, in this connection, I would like to make you understand one important thing. As we are using the text of Arthashastra of Kautilya, we are using this text. Remember one thing, texts were not an overnight phenomenon. It was written through ages. It means the people who wrote, maybe one, maybe more than one, who wrote these texts, they ultimately preserved their experiences regarding their interactions with the surroundings, what they interacted with their surroundings, they preserved their experiences, preserved in those texts as they had understood. Remember, as they had understood, they have preserved, and we are using in the light of our experiences those texts and including information from those texts in order to understand their patterns of economic activities, patterns of changes in economic activities. So, at the time of using such literary texts, we should also remember that those were produced by the authors as they had understood at their times. During the period 200 BCE to 300 CE, remember students, as our early Indians had moved from age to age, they had developed their economic activities. It means they had developed their experiences, they had developed their further, they had ensured their further progress towards development of economic activities. So, what we get? Again, agriculture. Agricultural crops produced included paddy with its varieties. Remember, we learned that paddy was produced during the Vedic period, age of the Vedas. Now, we are getting information, the varieties of paddy. It means the people had developed their experiences in the production of paddy. So, they had preserved their experiences in their texts, and we are getting information, and this is how we are getting information regarding the changes of their economic activities through ages. So, we get varieties such as brihi, shali, wheat, godhumo, barley, sugarcane, cotton, coconut, etc. Crops. Innumerable epigraphic records from Mathura, Sarnath, Bharut, Junar, Bhaja, Amravati, Dharnakataka, etc. provide references to different professions. These were such as the carpenter, the bamboo maker, the weaver, the oil maker, the perfumer, the garland maker, the goldsmith. Students, in this connection, you must remember one thing. As the people had developed their experiences, as they had developed their economic activities, as they had caused their progress further and further, they also needed different crafts in order to sustain their economic activities. They also needed supports from other supports in the form of other activities, because bamboo maker or oil maker, perfumer, all these are also needed. They also had needed these products in order to, in connection with their economic activities, as today also. Well, students, so far we have discussed many things. Remember one thing, these are entirely from what we get from different textual, epigraphic or field archaeological materials. So, on the basis of those information, we have been trying to build our ideas, we have been translating our ideas about the economic activities of the early Indians from earliest times to 1300 CE. Remember, what they have preserved, on the basis of those information we have been trying. But in this connection, we must be very careful while we are using their sources, their textual materials that they had preserved. Unless and until we become aware of this, we may be led to a wrong conclusion. This is number one. Number two, in writing any piece in connection with economic activities of the early Indians, we have to remember, as I have told you, three major points. Number one, production. Number two, consumption. Number three, transportation or distribution. And production, so far as production is concerned, we need two major things. One major thing, land, whatever, say agricultural production or non-agricultural production. We have to have a piece of land, useful land, so that we can produce our goods that we require. Number two, so far as transportation is concerned, we have to make roads, we have to use water routes, maybe canals, maybe rivers, maybe seas or oceans. We have to use for the transportation of what we have produced. And so far as consumption is concerned, not only we, but also our neighboring countries, maybe overseas countries. So, these three major points we have to keep in mind while writing anything particularly economic in regard to economic activities, so that we can squarely understand what our ancestors, particularly early Indians, had done in this regard. Thank you.